Hi everybody.
You know that this is not PowerPoint, so you cannot use your PowerPoint skills here.
Again, exactly the reason why I'm doing this one. So,
Just say it.
just so you guys know, this is the second time in my life I'm presenting. The last time, as you've heard from Alex's positive encouragement, was a great success. It lasted about 3 minutes because Citrix didn't send me the software I was supposed to talk about. So in this case, I hope I can stretch it to like 10 maybe. When we first started planning the whole Hong Kong thing, so to be honest, I expected more of an audience from Hong Kong. So I'm going to do an overview of the most used user environment management solutions I see in my job as a consultant. And what happened was the audience from Hong Kong is smaller than I expected. And what I was going to present was for the European audience. They know these products very well, so it wasn't as interesting for them. So panic shut in. I found a great white paper by PQR comparing all user environment management solutions, written by Ruben Sprout. So as my specific comparison is gone, I suggest you take a read at that. If you want to know more about comparing the specific solutions there are, it's like 100+ pages with everything in there from February last year. So that's still relatively recent. I really recommend it. But I've changed my topic because, well, I thought I'd go more towards general philosophy thing. I'm not going to present any answers, no real technical facts. It's more a way of thinking and where are we going with certain things. So let's see, where is page down in German?
It's on, you see?
It's on what?
Page down? Okay. You not see me? I'm not here?
Yeah. This is the invisible man. Technical support.
You see,
the
build.
way he should be.
Build.
Build? Yeah. Alright, so, yeah. I'm Tom. I'm from the Netherlands. I've been working with Citrix for a long time. I think most of my IT career I've been working with Citrix. Must be 15, 16 years now. I work as a freelance consultant, mostly in XenApp and with user environment management products like Redis and AppSense. Many of the guys presenting here today do more of the big infrastructure stuff. I touch it, I use it, I'm more on the user side in general. If there is a problem with the SAN, I can find it and I call people like Benny or whoever may know more about that. It's not really my department.
Well, that's funny.
Yes.
What the fuck?
Yes.
Okay,
It's
so
not my department, I heard this everything.
that's me, and my presentation has become, where is user environment management going? Having worked with this stuff for years, I've seen the changes over time, and there are certain frustrations that are growing with me and maybe with more people, that things are not getting better in this. We're managing it, but not getting that much better. And to talk about this, first I thought we'd set some quick boundaries. What is user environment management in the way we're going to talk about today? It's not the actual application provisioning. That's part of the system installation, you could say, as far as I'm concerned. Of course, with AppV and everything, it does touch it. This is specifically about the environment of the user. The user logs in, what printers will they have, what access will they have to USB read-write drives, graphic settings, backgrounds, the whole shebang. Anything that the user needs to work efficiently and store personal settings of their work environment. It can be broader, but that's the basic idea of today. So why do we need this stuff? And why was the last part I added before I transferred it not added here? Okay, we need this stuff because when the user logs in on a standard machine, they need to get their mail. So you need to have your mail configured. A user could have 1,000 printers in a company. You want to have your printer pre-configured. Several things, backgrounds, departments want different backgrounds. You want your security settings, you want to make sure the user doesn't log in and destroy the system straight away with what he's doing. Any kind of configuration to make sure that when the user logs in, he can work as soon as possible. And if the user wants to set things to his own specifications to make life easier for him because he likes it a bit different, or her, then we need to be able to store these things. And that's been going on since the moment XenApp was around, really. When you had local workstations At the time it was just, you have a local profile, your things are stored in there, everybody has their own machine. There is no problem with storing the settings. Distributing the settings, that was something else. But storing the settings, that was solved at the time because you had a profile, which was local, you weren't going to move anywhere anyway. So when I started with this, it was NT4 policies. This was local stuff, great fun. You've got terminal servers with Citrix running on there, people moving from machine to machine. They didn't have their settings. The policies were not working in an Active Directory, so it was per machine, you had to replicate everything everywhere. It wasn't that great. So you had kick scripts, good powerful stuff, fun to work with. At some point you had a 10-page document, nobody knew what they were doing. VBS, same kind of thing. My first serious Citrix project, these guys came along from a company called Res, Power Menu 1.0. And this was genius. They had a configuration you could store on one floppy disk, 1.44 megabytes. And you could provide your users with the application icons they needed to start their applications. You could provide them with certain printers, very basic. And you had a management tool which could allow people in the department to distribute applications to their various users. So they didn't have to call the help desk, simply I'm Sasha's manager, I know Sasha needs nothing, so I'm not going to give him anything. If he convinces me to use Notepad++, I go into a little menu and say, user Sasha, I know the guy, he works for me, give him Notepad++. And, well, hope he can figure out how to use it. This was really, really basic stuff at the time. It has evolved a lot. By now you can configure anything you can think of with user environment management. With the REST products, with various different products. In my space, I mostly come across REST Workspace Manager and Absence for doing this. There's many more. At the time also the Flex Profile Kit came out, which was a huge scripted structure to do nice things with. I see a smile there.
Yeah,
It was pretty cool.
Yeah,
it was fast. It was a bit complicated for some people.
It was easy. It was really easy.
It was really easy, but there was a way of thinking you had to get into. If you were used to having your one big logon script with some choices, and suddenly you had all these branches, things could get more complicated. When you worked with it a lot, it was fast and efficient, and you could also store your settings with that, with Hack Office Profile Wizard.
Jeroen van de Kamp.
Jeroen van de Kamp. Yep. So this is a long time ago. That's becoming Medio, which is now being bought by our friends from VMware. Northscale I've been hearing about, and there's actually many more. I was surprised to find how many there were in the speaker white paper, people I'd never heard of. And a new player, FSLogix. I'm not even sure if anything has been released yet what they're doing, but they're taking quite a different approach. What we'll quickly talk about is the way these people do the personalization settings. Almost anything in a profile for a user is a registry key or a file somewhere. That is mostly it. You're setting things. You're going to the registry, change this, add this, remove access to that, or you're putting some files somewhere that are used for configuration. Anything you do, map network drives, all this stuff is simply going into the registry and doing things. The only difference is that these products expose this to you in a much easier way than going into each policy, making your own policies and setting this kind of stuff. And you can use groups to give certain people certain applications easily. It's a layer on top of the whole thing. But in the end, what they're doing is simply going to the registry doing stuff, or putting a file somewhere and changing the file. That's it really. And FSLogix is taking a slightly different approach. They're actually using something now called layering, which I spoke mainly about very briefly yesterday, because I only found out about this one very like a few days ago as well. Happened to come across it. Benny, would you mind quickly, in a few sentences, explaining how this works, because you know this a lot better.
Really what they do is they introduced a filter driver, and the filter driver initially was just hiding applications that were installed on the system, so it was a completely different approach than anybody else did. So what they said is, okay, we install like 200 applications in the image, and then we pretend that they're not there anymore. The filter driver just, makes them disappear. Unfortunately, all of the application vendors said, yeah, you can do that, but if the application is installed, you still have to pay for every user that has potentially access to that. So these people at FSLogix had to think about it, what they can do with the technology that they have, because they have wonderful filter drivers. And so they decided that instead of hiding stuff, now they're using the filter driver technology to attach VHDs and have multiple VHDs that look, when they are combined, as if it's only one drive, and this is what they are basically doing. So they're stacking VHDs on top of each other, and it also allows them to store the profiles. So they have a VHD for the app, and they have a separate VHD for the profile for each application. Now managing all that, this is still a challenge because they don't have a management console yet. They built the engine, so this is what the version 2.0 does. And so they're entering this game of doing profile management in a different way. I wrote a blog article about it because I had long conversations with people who are familiar with the technology. So one is Kevin Goodman, who is one of the founders of FSLogix, and the other one I had conversations with is Ron Oglesby from Unidesk, because he's an expert in all these layering technologies. So it's interesting, FSLogix on one side and Unidesk on the other. So they're doing interesting stuff here. So suddenly FSLogix is back in the game, so Kevin Goodman is back.
Do they have limits on the numbers of apps in the VHD?
Nobody knows so far, so probably I will do some benchmarking for them, because they said, honestly, they don't know.
Yeah. And app volumes, I think the recommendation we're making is 200 per
Kevin believes that he can go up to 1,000, because that's what the OS supports, because they had limitations with earlier versions of Windows, because only 64 VHDs were allowed, but now with the newer versions of the operating systems, that seems not to be a limit anymore.
Okay.
So you can't do it with the old OSs.
Yeah. The app volumes is, I believe it's 200 per app stack and 20 app stacks per operating system.
Yeah, we get
I
it.
think something
Yeah,
in
so,
that
so,
line.
yeah. It's several thousand now, so
Okay.
that's the interesting thing. Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome.
What's interesting about this, the same thing is still happening. Parts of registry are being stored, to store certain parts of the settings. I'm sorry I skipped a bit there for people who don't do too much with this. What these products do to store specific settings for users is take a registry tree or a file tree and store that separately from the profile. So if you have a problem, you don't have to chuck away the whole profile. I have a problem specifically in Word, I mucked up some settings somewhere. That's fine. We can put your settings back from yesterday, for example, or just remove them, you get your default settings again. It's all being chopped up. And often there's a lot of folder redirection going on, which sucks. There's not much good to be said about folder redirection as far as I'm concerned. It's always been a bad idea. For a large part because application vendors don't work with the idea of that this happening. Most of the time they're thinking everything's going to be local, I want my app data to be local. There's traffic going up and down to a SAN all the time for this stuff. I've seen environments where 25% of the traffic to the SAN, 25% of the I/O operations, has been an RSI monitor. Simply this tool that sees, have you moved the mouse the last 2 seconds? Yes, you have. Let's write that to a folder on the SAN somewhere. Folder redirection, I've never liked it. Opinions are divided. FSLogix is very different.
Yeah.
They use a local disk. It's a virtual thing, but it's fast. It is really there straight away.
You don't mention UEV. You don't like UEV.
And many more. He says many more.
I said many more, and
But UEV is the Microsoft.
Yeah. It's a new Microsoft way, which honestly I have not touched yet.
Don't touch it.
What
That's
is
well,
it?
that's
Covered.
suck it.
That's
Don't
why
touch it.
That's why I
No,
invested.
for your kind of environments, touch it. And then you just roam the settings you
Touch
need
it
to roam.
once, you touch it again.
System out with the Microsoft Surface t-shirt.
No, it's a man.
But as
But in the butt.
as I found on Google, that's gone too far.
No, no.
I have lots of sessions on YouTube about
I have.
subject.
What UEV?
Okay, no, this is right. Sorry,
No,
I'm
That
completely.
was right on that.
I'll stick to the
Why-
horror movies.
But why
that
am I
remember.
frustrated about this? In theory, it's nice technology. The idea was going to take complexity out of the management of all these things, make life easier for everybody, speed up logins. So many of us here have been through the bloody log-on time wars of the year 2000 up. Like, ooh, I got 5 seconds, I got 6 seconds. I never cared all that much, but I have noticed that log-on times have been getting slower and slower. The main reason is people are customizing more and more and more. It's getting ridiculous. I've had customers where they first have to parse through 350 background file checks to see if this is your department and this is your specific resolution and this is the background file you need. We're not talking 20,000, 30,000 user environment here. 5,000 users, some different departments, all different possible resolutions. It has to be exact to their specifications. 15 seconds just for checking which background you need. Maybe a bit over the top. And they have not become more efficient. Everything's been slowing down actually. I expect, well, in the 15 years, my log-on times in NT4 were wonderful compared to what I'm getting these days. Not that NT4 was compared to what I'm having these days, but that specific part.
But back then it was more mandatory profiles and things.
Android profiles I still see a lot. I still use them
Yeah,
a lot
no.
myself. It's very nice, efficient stuff. But that brings me to what I want to talk with you guys about. Where is this going? This whole profile I need. That's what I'm not too sure about. With more and more possibilities. Let's say this is your standard profile. It's the same in your local machine as it is in your user part. This is what you have customized in there. This is all that really matters, this tiny piece. For every user, putting all this in there, we're referencing it different for every user. This is the only change. It's empty in this case, could have been full, that's the only difference there is between the machine part and the user part. But for every user this is being loaded. Now these profile sizes can vary. I saw in FS Logic, I found an interesting quote where they said, yeah, profiles go from 50 megabytes to up to 4 gigabytes.
Oh,
Why?
Ooh, well,
what?
if my basic profile starts at 50 megabytes, I'm already like, I have a huge problem because it can be a few megs. I mean, it can be pretty fast. But still, a lot of the information in there is redundant. Most of the information in your profile is redundant. So is there another way to start looking at this? Is there a possibility to change this and maybe have a more efficient way of setting up the user's environment without having this bloatware essentially around it?
Sorry.
I don't know.
Sorry, John, I just have a question.
Yeah.
What other options are there for folder redirection?
One nice option is just keep your redirected folders local and store them in something, for example. You're having local drive access. And yes, when you log on, you're going to wait a few seconds longer. Drives are really fast these days. It's that traffic going back and forth all the time over the network to these redirected folders which is bugging me. I mean, yeah, you don't want 2-minute logon times. But if I have to choose between a 15-second and a 13-second logon time and have consistently better performance throughout the day because my stuff is local, and it can work better with some applications. Most applications are fine, by the way, but some applications are just dumb, and they do the worst possible things when you have redirected folders. That's the reason. But you're going to have slower logon times, and people will say, yes, there's a greater risk of profile corruption if things crash. Yes, definitely. But things don't crash that much.
If you're saying folders, are you really just talking about the application data folder?
No, for your user folders. For example, your desktop folder. The My Documents, of course, it's always smart to keep that on a network drive.
Right.
But
Well, Microsoft recommends that the desktop and My Documents folder be treated as the same these days. They're both data repositories. People like to save their documents on their desktop, so Microsoft said, hey, put it in a redirected folder in the same
it
context.
depends a lot what you choose. Most of my customers choose not to allow their users to save documents on their desktop. They can save shortcuts to the documents. If you lose the shortcuts, swap. That's not that important. It's the documents themselves that are important. And of course you will want to store those in the network. That speaks for itself.
So is all the chatter in the application data folder?
Lots, yeah. That's probably most of the chatter, but that's actually, that's the one where I'm like, yeah, you don't really need to redirect that one. The application data folder is used a lot as a temporary storage place for applications, not so much for actual configuration of things. It is in there, but it's less, it's in there a less amount.
And these tools today, don't they offer an opportunity to stream that application data onto the local context of the OS for operation? Can't you pick and choose among these now?
What exactly do you mean with stream? I mean, your folder is redirected, so if your application says, well, I want my specific settings, it's just going to get that little piece.
So I launch my app and calls to the redirected location, brings the data down local and provisions it. So it's local, it's not over the wire. Log off, send it back, log
Well,
on, bring it
I
over.
think from Windows 7 onwards, if you use redirected folders, you can set it up in a way that it actually does cache it locally as well. There are ways and means to do that, but the traditional way of doing that is just, yeah, I/O back and down all the time.
Okay.
And it's bigger than it needs to be. That's my beef with it.
Fair enough.
So what options could there be? Well, as I know it's on the FS Logic website. Well, it hasn't. You have a point. We are maybe we're getting more and more options. But until I read the FS Logic stuff that they're doing now, even what they're doing, they're storing still the same things.
Oh, yeah.
Nothing has really changed in this.
No.
But that's in our Windows world. Who's been on the MTR today?
Yeah. Yesterday? Great.
Yesterday.
Day before?
No, yesterday.
All these people with their mobile phones, using these applications, pre-configured stuff, all these kids are doing just fine. I think I've seen more concurrent users on the MTR today than I've had in many of the environments I've worked in. It's incredible the amount of people here just busy all the time, really efficiently. And that's another thing that's changed a lot in the last 15 years. The users themselves have become quite different. But I'm sorry, I'm going back and forth a bit. So, is technology an answer to this? To the problems we have with the complexity we're getting with larger and larger configurations for users. The layer technology, I think it's really interesting. I think it's going to be a lot faster. Specifically, it's a storage thing. It's the difference between taking things as you log on or log off, or start an application or close an application and storing them over a network, or saying we're going to do it on a virtual hard disk. A way better approach, I think. This gets way down on a lower level in the machine. It's going to be a lot faster. The second option I like a lot better, actually. Can we ditch the profile?
No.
As the man there was saying earlier, it's about the application. The specific application. Do I need a whole profile thing to run an application? I need to work. I had a customer recently, they had two extreme cases. The one guy had 350 backgrounds. Some other guys had to do migration from Citrix back to workstations, which was an interesting one. And so we sit down, configure stuff. Like, okay, let's start doing the applications. He's like, yeah, there's the configuration file for the AS400. Oh, and they need to use this address for auto-discovery of their mail. Like, okay, and what about the rest? What do you mean the rest? What they do with their applications, I don't care. It's local applications. They muck it up. We reinstall the system for them. They need to use their documents. They get a few things like, okay, I think they had their template set up for Word. 80 applications. They did some stuff for Word. Their AS400. Just a connection string. And the auto-discovery. That was it. That was all they needed. AS400 had a lot of personalization, but it was stored on the AS400 side, which is nice and roamy. You can go anywhere in the world, connect with your connection string to your AS400. You have all your settings. It's stored on the central system. The same with Exchange in their case. They had no short settings. It was all done in Exchange. What was relevant for them was in the Exchange side. So two very extreme cases. But these guys who said, well, the users configure it out for themselves. They had a really small configuration, very easy to manage, very fast. So the profile, can we ditch that? Would be nice. Is it going to happen with Microsoft? I doubt it. It's a way of working. You can't just throw that overboard. Which brings us to the next one. Ditch the traditional concept of a user session. I was talking to Sasha a bit earlier about Docker. He explained to me a bit about it. I think I get it. Again, it's the application that matters. And what platform it's on doesn't matter. It's just an application with a few settings for that application. Yes, you want some applications to talk with each other. You need some extra stuff for that. most of the information you get right now in your user profile is redundant. I just want the stuff from my application. In this case, I had a problem with my laptop. I couldn't hook it up to here. What did I want for Notepad to be stored? My font size would have been nice. We wouldn't have had to find the Control Plus thing. That's it. I don't need any configuration for Notepad++. And again, on the MTR today, didn't see anybody going like, where are my settings? What are we doing wrong here? How come this Android stuff, which everybody's like, oh, there's so many flavors, it's unstable and everything? I don't know. I saw like 250 happy users at least today. And they were all going at it really fast with hundreds of applications on their phone. Is there a better way with this? So yeah, the user session altogether. Have a session where simply an application starts. So you don't get a user session, you get an application session, which is a tiny bit of information just for that application. We'll have some links to other stuff, but you don't need the whole bubble around it going on all the time. The AS400 thing. If I have an AS400 connection, that's it. Tiny bit of settings, the rest is stored on there maybe. Web applications these days. You get some cookies, some other stuff is stored on their side. I don't think I've ever had to reset a cookie session. I do come across it sometimes for users, but for myself, well, Google works great. But have a bit of infrastructure behind that. But I don't get anything on my side I see from that. How do others do it? Well, I'm quite curious about that actually. I'm not a programmer. I don't use Apple or Linux at all. But I don't hear complaints about settings being lost or pre-configuring stuff that much on these systems. And they are getting more prevalent all the time, but I don't hear it. On the other hand, this is a general thing, isn't it? Users are dumb. We need to write everything down for them, with like big capital letters. Make sure they can't change anything about the capital letters. Well, maybe they're not as dumb as we think they are.
I love users.
No, well, the thing is,
We have nothing.
Benny's been seeing my examples without him knowing it, but he was talking about the 1 pixel change in an icon.
Yes.
I've had these same phone calls. We've upgraded an application. Oh, the users are completely happy with the application, but could you please put the low color icon back because they're confused? I get this from a manager. I'm like, really? They like a new application with a new interface, they can't find it?
Yeah.
So you can think about this two ways. Either the manager is pandering his users. He's like, no, they're too stupid, they will not be able to handle this. You can think about another way. They are too stupid to handle this, in which case it's kind of harsh, maybe you shouldn't employ them. But that's just me. I have a background in this, in working with this stuff. I expect icons to change.
No, it's
I
not
don't
about-
think it's a big thing.
It's not about being stupid, it's about how brains work.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
about
People.
pattern recognition.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the people thing.
Yeah.
That's,
People hate
that's
change.
definitely
Change
true.
is not.
Yeah.
If you want to change your network, you have to let all the people go, change the network, and then rehire them and say, that's just how we work, and then it's fine.
Yeah.
Wow, that's kind of harsh.
No, but it
That's
works.
Yeah, but it works.
It definitely works.
But I must tell too, in one
First we fired
one
them,
hospital,
we hired
which is not customer of mine, the IT guy says like this: he will actually lay off all the people, yeah, do virtualization, then they will hire them back again. That's the only way to do it. Because they say that's not possible to virtualize. All people which worked it, which is actually silly, which is, it is. I look at this and I say,
Of course you can't go firing people because they can't handle this stuff, but I think
he will hire
there's
them
a
again.
difference between the expectation we are having and what users can actually handle, which brings me on to this one as well. The new user. 15 years ago, it was all quite new. Right now, again, you mentioned it this morning, people are working on all kinds of devices everywhere. And this morning, 250 people on their phones doing all kinds of stuff, on the move in the train. I did see one call to help desk. And they've got hundreds of applications on there. I mean, for the average kid, 20-year-old these days, 100 applications on their Android or iPhone is nothing. They're doing just fine. It's a different person working with this right now. And the people who have been around from 15 years ago, they've learned a lot as well. Maybe we should start thinking about how we can connect better with the new group of users and the new experienced users we've had by now. And not underestimate them and go like, yeah, you have to just, everything perfect for them and make sure they don't destroy anything. Or at some point you could say, at what point does all the work I'm doing to manage these sessions, to set up all the configuration, to make everything picture perfect for them, at what point is it good enough? Can I say it's good enough, like these people I was talking about who just had 3 user settings? Is that good enough? We can restore their machine if it's necessary. It's not going to be perfect, but the amount of hassle and time saved on both sides is going to be huge. I like watching these stupid car shows. I'm a couch potato, I'm sitting on TV, overhauling, etc., etc., etc. There's an interesting difference there. Some of these programs take a car from the 60s, fix it up, spend $150,000, you have a perfect car. Some people take the same car, spend $15,000, you have a car which to me, got quite a large TV, looks exactly the same, looks perfect. I'm sure there's a difference. Will I notice? Will the user notice? There's this good enough philosophy. That's something that's also coming into manufacturing from what I've read about. It's like, does everything have to be perfect? Apple is an example for like, this has to be perfect. I'm an Android user, I'm a cheapo. It's good enough for me. I recognize personally, probably an iPhone is better, probably. But I'm a cheap Dutch bastard, so for the Android, it's good enough. That might also be a way to think about it. You don't have to have everything perfect, because there's too much to get perfect these days.
So I see more and more in the States, like marketing by the IT department. Do you guys see marketing by the IT department? Because some of it, I think, is the business of communicating this change that you're describing. And I'm walking into businesses and they're actually, the placards are in the lobby, the new IT and service, they're more communication. You guys see that too? Is that happening in your world? Yeah.
I see.
Yes.
A lot of communication sent out all the time.
Right.
Updates, things went up and down. Sorry.
Right, so you're talking to people and you're informing them of change, right? And you're kind of selling it, right? You're like, we're going to change that icon and we're going to do it for a good reason,
Yeah.
right? And all that stuff.
We change Outlook icon. So new icon is here.
So here's a funny one.
new.
Yeah. Here's a funny one. When I was a Citrix admin and I was delivering published desktops, of course the best practice is no background color. Lock it all down. So it was blue. And people would say to me, Rick, why is the desktop blue? And I would say, because it's the color of the future. You want to be part of the future, don't you? Right?
Yeah.
The famous Sean Bass story where he's like doing his project and they change it over to Citrix and one of the users is complaining and Sean is there with the senior consultant and the user is complaining about the keyboard being slow. And the consultant, they give the user a bigger monitor, and the consultant says, we're going to look into that, and we'll get back to you. And then just let the user work for a little bit, and it all works out in the end. It was change that drove the user to reference it. So communication, marketing. I'm seeing a lot of town hall meetings with larger customers. The CIO goes out. One of the famous ones was a large bank in California I dealt with here in the last year. They replaced the CIO, he went out on the town hall meeting and he discovered that people were taking up to 10 or 15 minutes to log on and it had been going on for years. And no one had communicated any of this stuff.
That's normal.
Yeah, it
that's
needed
why
to
it's always
change.
worked, so.
Yeah, but then it started turning like, hey, wait a minute, just like we've always done with log on time. 15 minutes a day, how many log-ons and log-offs a day? An hour and a half of productivity down the drain, and how much salary we were throwing away. Hey, all these senior managers, we're going to fire all of them and replace them with people that are going to communicate.
And on the other hand, when this comes probably from huge configurations, that's a large part of it. Also, this has to be some big mistake in there.
Oh yeah, it's an error in
The huge complexity
configuration.
where you're getting now in configuring every possible thing we can, the complexity of doing all this stuff is causing more hassle than the complexity the environment actually had in the first place. I think setting up applications now, from what I've been hearing today again about some of the great fast ways to set up giant clusters of machines serving VDIs, lightning speed and all that stuff, it sounds a lot easier than configuring 100 applications for every dot and comma. That's great. I mean, I can call some of these guys in 2-3 days. I can have 40-50 servers working for me as Canap Farm on there. And then I'm starting the applications. That's a year project for 150 applications in a serious environment. There has to be some middle ground here. And I don't have the answers. That's why I was like, what do people think about this? where is this going? I know we can't reach the profile. That's not going to happen. Or maybe we need an extra layer which is going to say, yeah, you're going to have general sessions just running there like a computing layer, an application lands on there, you get some sense of that application, but you don't have a specific user session. You have application computing power session. I don't know how you would describe
I
it.
think this layering thing is interesting. Like, for example, in the app volumes where we're doing the writable volume, it's just-in-time delivery, so you're delivering you're delivering a read-only image. Like, for example, when you install the app volumes product onto the image, it renders that code pattern as basically read-only. And then, okay, here's my writable volume. User logs on. The operating system sends all of the writes to the disk that belongs to Benny. And he logs off, logs on. He gets a read-only operating system and his writable disk, and it's provisioned just in time. And this business of over the network that you're describing is gone.
Yep.
Then there's the layering thing, Unidesk, Mirage. From what we're doing, we're not doing necessarily layering, but there is a context of the user element, which allows that read-only desktop with a persistent approach per user and retaining delta. So things are changing. There is
Things are
change in the air.
I thought that the whole pre-launch thing was interesting in that because you were skipping a large part of setting up a session.
Love pre-launch.
Yeah, it's a bit weird that when I want to start working on an application, it has to set up a whole session. Why? I mean, when I switch the computer on, it's setting up all kinds of stuff. Why is it setting up a session for me? Why don't I just have a compute layer and all I do is, let's say you have an empty session, nothing on there yet. I come along, here's my username, do a few quick things to set up a few things. That's it. Don't initialize a session at that point. Why is that happening that way?
Identity.
There has to be
User
another way.
rights.
I hope.
Yep.
So, like I said, I don't have any answers. I'm asking questions and maybe guys will think about it. And we'll have beer later and discuss ways and options, and maybe the programs of the future will come along and say, well, this is how we can solve this, because the way Microsoft is now, and everybody's working on Microsoft, you can't reach your profile. It's not going to happen. Maybe with something I heard from Sasha that Microsoft was working with the Docker-like idea as well, having like container and just small things. A compute layer. Yeah, probably I'm using completely the wrong terminology. Just a layer that does the compute for you for that tiny application. Good work. So, New Hope, same thing. Framework for providing use with relevant configuration. This is an important one. Relevant. Good enough, maybe. For them to work efficiently in short personal settings with the work environment. Without making them feel like idiots because they can't do anything and everything is locked down and the background is going to be blue. And without making admins commit suicide, which I was about to do at some of the projects I've been because it's just so huge. And what I'd like to just mention again, Power Menu 1.0, providing application icons to users, locking down the applications they can't have, configuration for 1,000 users on a floppy disk. I love it.
How they do this now with SQL database.
Huge SQL database, local caching, but they have no choice. The amount of stuff, it's incredible what you can do with these products. You can make the craziest configurations. But at some point it's like, yeah, it's all nicely in the GUI now, but now you've got your 10 to 100 page logon script in a GUI, which just makes it slower to read.
And it's actually complexity of REST or absence is it's sometimes bigger than the profile management you want to optimize. Yeah, that's actually, the problem is less complex than the solution. that's funny stuff.
Basically. So that's why I'm frustrated. And the fact that I couldn't hook up my computer. But like I said, maybe later have a beer and talk about how we're going to change the user profile role permanently.
There's one sure thing, we're going to have a beer later.
I think the chance of that happening is higher than the odds of us changing the future of computing, but still. So, thank you guys for tolerating my ramblings, and I hope to see you all here in Berlin, including everybody from Hong Kong, of course. You're not expected to be there in 2 weeks' time. Otherwise, Alex will be really upset. He is very sensitive.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Okay, and thank you very much.